My wife confessed that she cheated on me 4 years ago before her sister's wedding. Then I watched as I found out my wife cheated years ago right before her sister's wedding and then had to watch her dance with the guy. The time frame is important here. We have been married for 6 years and were together as a couple for 3 years before that, so we've been together for about 9 years. 2 weekends ago, her sister got married, and of course my wife was in the wedding party. As you would expect, she spent the 2 weeks prior to the wedding helping her sister get everything ready. No big deal at all. She kept me informed, and I knew this was going to happen. She took that Thursday to Saturday off of work to help her and, in fact, stayed with her for those days. I certainly know her sister, but I barely know the guy who is now my brother-in-law. In fact, I've only met him a few times, but he seems nice enough. I show up Sunday morning, a few hours before the ceremony, hoping to steal just a few minutes to see her, not wanting to intrude on the day since I know she is busy. But I hadn't seen her since Wednesday. She sees me outside of her parents' house and sends her brother out to tell me that she will come out and see me at the car, which I thought was odd, but whatever. She finally comes out, sits in the seat next to me, and gives me a kiss. But instead of acting happy to see me, she tells me that she has to talk to me and doesn't want it to ruin her sister's day. She informs me that at the reception, if I still want to go, I might hear some things about the best man in her, and she didn't want it to be awkward or weird. I just kind of sat there, stunned. She said that about 5 years ago, she had a fling with him and that it didn't mean anything, but she was aware that by nature, I'm somewhat jealous, and she wanted me to know in advance so that, if I heard something, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I just kind of sat there. This was not how I thought my morning would go, but I told her I appreciated knowing it and that it certainly wasn't a big deal now. She went back in the house, and I went to eat lunch and decided to meet her at the church. As I'm eating and reading my phone, it dawns on me. She said she had a fling with him 5 years ago, and we've been together for 9. My first reaction was to blow it off and think that she just told me the wrong time, but the more I thought about it, the more I started to remember about a year and a half of us being together. She had a phase where she was really sketchy about her behavior, wasn't available when she normally was, and went on 2 weekend camping trips that were with friends from work. Of course, I'm a little knotted up over this, but I know I have a long day ahead of me. I go to the wedding and sit there watching everything. After the wedding, they have a line that you walk by and congratulate the bride and groom, and the wedding party is standing in line as well. My wife is standing with some other guy I don't know at all, but the best man was there, and I just went down the line and acted like it was no big deal. Get to the reception, and it takes forever for them to come because of photos. She finally gets there and sits with me. I decided not to say anything as I didn't want to distract from the day, but instead of just letting it go, she then tells me that each of the groomsmen and bridesmaids are going to dance, and that she is going to be dancing with him. I asked why when she was not his partner for the party, and she said that the maid of honor and her partner were actually married and wanted to dance with each other. At this point, I'm a little more than perturbed, but I try not to let it show. As the evening progressed, I avoided drinking, knowing my tendencies. She mingled with everyone, and then the dance began. He approached, extending his arm, and she stood up. I made a conscious effort not to watch. When she returned, they were laughing and joking like old friends. She decided to introduce us, and although I wanted to tell him to leave, I greeted him with forced politeness. This didn't stop him from sitting down and talking with her for a few minutes. The more they reminisced about past times and places, the angrier I got. Eventually, I excused myself to the bathroom, and when I came back, he was gone. She accused me of being rude, which I didn't need to hear at that moment. I told her this was NVJJTIM the time or place to discuss it, but we would definitely talk later. She said she was going to change clothes and then tell her sister we were leaving because I had ruined her day, but she didn't want me to ruin her sister DTNM's day, too. I insisted I could behave and didn't want to cause any drama, preferring to stay. She changed clothes and came back, still upset. I hadn't said a word to her and even shook the guy JTM's hand. I guess I just looked miserable, which she took as a sign I was causing trouble. She was adamant about leaving, so I said if she really wanted to go, we could, but if she preferred to stay, IVJ TMD be happy to. I even offered to leave so she could stay since I had my own car. At first, she said we should stay, but then changed her mind, saying if I couldn't VJTM but behave better, I should leave. I asked how I was acting, and she said it was clear I was being aggressive. I didn't BDGT know whether to laugh or be offended. I went back in and sat down while she mingled with the guests. I talked with her brother for a while, then ended up back at our table, chatting with her grandma. We left at the same time, and I got home just before she did. I was sitting in the living room waiting for her. When she came in, I didn't beat around the bush. I asked her to retell the story about this guy, and she repeated it word for word. After a while, I asked if she was sure about the timeline, and she confirmed. I reminded her we had been together for 9 years, so this fling was well into our relationship. Instead of being flustered or denying it, she simply said, VJNJI, no. DJKJ, I asked her to explain, and she said they worked together and it was just physical. She felt we were in VDA TMT in a great place at the time and never had feelings for him or any intention of leaving me. She admitted it was probably a mistake to tell me now, but didn't VDJ TMT want me to be blindsided. I didn't VJ TMT take it well. We had a huge argument, which ended with her calling me childish, saying it happened long ago and had no bearing on our current life. But I disagreed. DJJ, she cheated on me and didn't VDGTM even feel guilty. 2 things. I despise being called childish when I'm upset about something. It infuriates me because it feels like her way of asserting superiority. I told her I needed time to process everything, but she insisted there was nothing to think about and that our love should make this irrelevant. That was 2 weeks ago, and I still can't move past it. She's been trying to talk to me over the past few days, but honestly, I don't see her the same way anymore. Part of me thinks this is foolish since it happened years ago. We're married now, and there haven't been any issues since. But another part of me is deeply hurt by the revelation of her infidelity, and it stings even more because instead of empathizing, she's trying to make me feel guilty for not brushing it off. I'm at a loss. Apologies for the lengthy post. I probably should have trimmed some details, but it all poured out. Update 1. First, I want to clear up something from my initial post. It doesn't impact the situation much, but it bothers me that I was unclear. The maid of honor, not my wife, was married to the groomsman my wife walked down the aisle with. Some people thought my wife arranged the dance, but I know that part was legitimate. However, it doesn't mean she didn't try to manipulate the situation. I just wanted to clarify that point. I'm providing an update because I've received over 40 requests since last week. Thank you for your concern. I wish I had a bold statement about how I took a stand, but that's not what happened. To be blunt, I'm in limbo. There have been developments, but they've only made my decision harder. Last week, I was mostly angry, but as the weekend progressed, I became mostly sad. I want to hate her and flip the switch that tells me I'm being walked on, but it's hard because I still love her. And this is tearing me apart. Here's what has happened of consequence. She finally realized I wasn't just going to get over this, which made her understand that I might want out of the marriage. This realization led to a near nervous breakdown. Some of you suggested she might manipulate me with crocodile tears, and I kept that in mind. But it soon became clear that her reaction was genuine. She had a legitimate panic attack, leading to an ER visit, an overnight hospital stay, new medications, and a scheduled follow-up with her doctor. This situation brought her family into the mix, leading to long conversations. When we got home with her family in tow, I asked what she wanted to do. She said she wanted to stay with her mom for a while, which was fine with me as I had no desire to hang around with her dad or sister. I told her I was going to finish up some work and would be home later. 2 hours after getting to work, I received a text from her begging me to come home, saying she really needed to talk with me. So I finished up and headed home. Her dad greeted me on our front porch and asked if he could talk to me for a minute. My anger level was already somewhat high, but I was ready to go to war if she had dumped a sea of lies on me with her dad. I mean, it's not like he and I are best friends, but we've never had a bad moment. I wasn't going to be happy about being the idiot who broke his baby's heart. We sat on our deck chairs, and he floored me with his opening line. I was expecting anything but what he said. He mentioned that she told them what had happened and that he wanted to apologize to me. He felt like he did a really poor job as a parent, and this mindset she had was a creation of her mother's. While he loved both of them, he said they were wrong. He had told his wife years ago that telling the girls that whatever happens before marriage doesn't count was a terrible idea and a flawed value system to instill in them. He then said that he wasn't there to defend his daughter's actions, but wanted me to understand that she honestly believed being married was an entirely different life. Her parents had romanticized marriage to the point that she didn't grasp real life. Basically, he was kind of throwing his wife under the bus, but this was not what I expected at all. We shook hands, and he said that no matter what I decided, he still thought very highly of me, which, honestly, made me feel good for a moment. I then went inside, and my wife was curled up in a ball on her mom's lap, clearly crying the entire time I was gone. Her mom got up, hugged me, and told me she was sorry and that she loved me, praying that we could work this out. My wife was laid out on the couch at this point. Her mom and dad left, and she sat there looking at me and crying. Okay, this is where I'm going to upset everyone and just tell you that I couldn't take it. I went to her, and we hugged for a long time with her telling me over and over how sorry she was. I know it was the weak thing to do, but again, I have to say in my defense that just before this incident occurred, I loved her with all my heart and would have done anything to not see her in pain. Whatever she had done, I still didn't want to see her like that. Look, it's very possible that she was putting on an Oscar-worthy performance, but I don't honestly think so. She really seemed broken at that point in time. After a while, when she calmed down, I asked her what she wanted me to come home and talk about, and she said she wanted to get everything out in the open so I didn't feel like I was being lied to or manipulated. She wanted me to ask her questions. I wish I had written down a list, but I came up with a few off the top of my head. She was brutally honest with me, and some of the questions I asked, I probably shouldn't have because now the mental image is stuck there, but honestly, it was there anyway. I just now have confirmation. First, I asked for dates, or at least approximate dates. I didn't tell her about the engagement concern I had because I didn't want her to change her story, and she remembered exactly when they occurred. Fortunately, this happened earlier in our relationship than she initially told me, so we were not engaged when this happened. I can't tell you what a relief it was because I became physically ill when I thought about that when someone mentioned it in my last post. Second, I asked how many times she went overboard with this because instead of just telling me how many different dates, she decided to tell. She told me how many times there was penetration. She wasn't trying to be cruel. She honestly thought that VJTMs, what I wanted to know. This part of the conversation did not help me at all and almost broke me down. In truth, it wasn't that frequent. It only happened on 3 different days, but there were several instances during those days. Then came the hard part. Why did she do it? Again, I'm not the most stoic of men, and I'm ashamed to admit this, but I couldn't just get this out without starting to cry. I asked why I wasn't good enough, why him, and why she didn't just leave me. It was her turn to hold me as everything came rushing at me, her telling me, having to watch them laugh together, and now her telling me how many times they did it and where. She spoke during this, but to this day, I have no idea what she said. I was too upset, and honestly, nothing she could say would make a difference. After I composed myself, I told her that the betrayal was horrible, but her response when I found out was just as bad, if not worse. She agreed and apologized for calling me immature. She said she truly believed it wouldn't matter to me now because we were married. When she said this, my blood started to boil again. I began to say something, but she interrupted, saying that after talking with her parents, she now realized how wrong she was, and that cheating is cheating. However, she still felt our happiness since being married should count for something. I replied that I felt our happiness was built on a lie. This led to another breakdown on her part, and almost another ER visit, but between Ativan and having her breathe into a paper bag, we got her calm. I let her sleep the rest of the night, feeling emotionally exhausted. By Sunday, we were talking again. By this time, I wasn't as sympathetic. I told her that her introducing him to me was crappy, making me watch her dance with him was extra crappy, and only telling me because she was going to get caught was the ultimate level of crappy. I then demanded to know why she thought I would find out and how many people at the wedding knew besides me. Obviously, the guy knew, but his best friend, who is now my brother-in-law, also knew. This led to her sister finding out, and she was afraid her sister would be the one to tell me. I asked how often she sees this guy, and she said the wedding was the first time in 3 years. Then I lost it and asked if she had slept with him during any of the wedding preparations. She got defensive, acting as if she wouldn't sleep with anyone because she was married. I lost it again and had to leave for a while because it felt like she was living in some alternate reality where marriage meant different things. I finally cooled off enough to come home and try to be civil. She finally asked me what she could do to help me get past all of this. It may not sound like much, but it was the first time she offered to help me, so it was a nice gesture. I told her I wasn't sure what she could do or if there was anything either of us could do and that I might never get over this. She said she wanted to help because she didn't want to see me in pain and that over the years she hopes I'll be able to judge her based on who she is now. Now she said she would do anything to work this out. She also wanted to make sure I knew that she has been 100% faithful since we got married and would never break her vows. I sarcastically thanked her, which I admit was the most mature response. I then asked for a break from further discussions until at least Wednesday. I have 2 projects to finish, and honestly, I'm just exhausted and have no clue what I want to do. I oscillate between periods of intense anger where I want to kick her out and periods of deep emotional turmoil where I want to just forget this and move forward with her. Yes, I know this is not what anyone wanted to hear, and no, I'm not proud to type it. But it is what it is at the moment. Update 2. I've been absolutely overwhelmed by the responses IVJJTMDV received. IVJTMDV gotten over 400 private messages, and I just can't respond to all of them or any of them anymore, as it would take me a week to do that. I want to thank all of you who have written to me and those of you for whom this struck a chord. All I can say is that I'm sorry you had to go through this as well. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I do want to say one thing. The vast majority of the people contacting me via PM were all afraid to bring up their point of view in the open for fear of being harassed. I have honestly taken both points of view into consideration, and there has been some great advice and not so great advice, but I think people's hearts are in the right place. I just wish that if people disagreed with each other, they wouldn't feel the need to demonize a person because of a point of view. Okay, for the hundreds of you that have been clamoring for an update, here it is. As you know, I asked to drop the topic until last night so I could focus on a job-related item I needed to complete. She kept her word about it, but I could tell she was very emotional and honestly nervous. She is taking strong medication for her anxiety, but even so, I could still see how anxious she had been. I wasn't intentionally trying to punish her. In fact, quite the opposite. I was really trying to give her a break as much as myself, but she told me last night that not holding her or showing any real affection towards her was almost torture. Well, last night finally arrived, and we had what my dad always called a come-to-Jesus meeting. I got home from work and brought dinner so there would be no distractions from cleanup or anything. We started talking around 6 and finally ended around 2-ish. In that time frame, we laid out a lot of issues that have been present and discussed what we both are willing to do to move forward. Long story short, starting today, I am living with my brother for the next few days. She is understandably upset by all of this, and I am making an effort to communicate openly with her so she does not feel abandoned or neglected. If you're wondering how we got from talking to me living with my brother, here it is in a nutshell. I know this is not going to make several of you very happy, but here is where I'm going with this. I want to save my marriage, but I can do it while feeling that our relationship was somewhat built on a lie. I know she never intended to lie once we were married, but when I sat down and thought about this one question, would I have stayed with her if I had known at the time she did this? Each and every time I answered no. So to me, she took away my ability to choose whether or not I wanted to continue. And we built the next few years on a foundation that was quite true. However, the truth is, we still built something. Sometimes foundations can be repaired, and sometimes you have to tear them down to build anew. This is what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to shake things up enough for both of us so that we can start over. As I mentioned in the very first post, our marriage up until this point had been what I would consider nearly perfect, or as perfect as anything can be. However, some very troubling things occurred due to this situation. Here is a brief synopsis of our talk. I laid out the fact that while I was absolutely upset about the cheating, and yes, I still consider it cheating, which she has now come to realize, I was equally upset by her lack of consideration for my feelings. I told her that I resented being called immature and childish for something that, objectively speaking, I had every right to be upset about. Her response was to apologize and acknowledge that she was wrong. She admitted fault and explained that at the time she had convinced herself that because we were married, I was wrong to be upset about something that happened beforehand. She now sees where this thinking was flawed. I then told her that I felt very disrespected by her associating with this guy right in front of me and that I felt humiliated having to shake his hand. Her response was, once again, to apologize. She said that in her mind at the time, she felt like she was trying to show me there was nothing there. She thought if she avoided him or acted shady around him, I would be more upset. I told her she was wrong. She admitted that this realization hit her the hardest, especially since even her sister told her how wrong it was to do this to me. She was deeply hurt by this because it had hurt me, which she never intended. We then talked about her lack of remorse over being with someone else while we were together. Her only response was to say that she was very sorry and that at the time she used very poor judgment. If she could go back and change the past, she would. The conversation that got the most discussion was how I felt she wasn't really sorry for anything, but was just sorry that I didn't shrug my shoulders and say everything was going to be okay. I believed there would be repercussions for what I consider an act of betrayal and an act of not caring about me. I'll give her full credit here. She was brutally honest. She admitted that when we got home after the event, she started to realize that I was going to let this go. As time went on, she knew this was an issue. Her first instinct was to be mad at me for being mad at her, but then realized how stupid that was even from her own point of view. She had been conditioned to think that as my wife, I should easily forgive and forget something that happened before we were married. She also admitted that when it became real, she outright panicked at the thought of losing her marriage. Nobody on either side of her family is divorced, so she could be the first, which was a big factor in her panic attack. As the week progressed and she spoke more to her family, she began to see that what she had in her mind about marriage was the end-all, be-all she thought it was. She also genuinely felt bad about bringing the guy around me. However, it's worth noting, and I noticed this too, that she never said she felt guilty about being with him. I want everyone to know this as well. What I've given you above is a brief synopsis of events. She might sound robotic in this version, but believe me, she was not. There were lots of real, honest tears. There were a few curse words, and there were even moments of pleading and begging. As I said, this went on for about 8 hours, so by the time we were done, she was physically exhausted. I have set out the following steps if we are to reconcile, and it is totally up to her if she wants to stay together. She is very adamant about staying together, by the way. I don't care how illogical it seems. She is never to have contact with him again. This is an absolute for me and a deal breaker, and I was absolutely clear on this. We have to attend couples therapy. While I am living with my brother, we are still legally married, and this is not an invitation or excuse for either of us to see anyone else. Again, it would be a deal breaker in a second if either of us uses this as an excuse. Believe me, I will not let that happen, and I don't believe she will either. We start over to a point. I have to view her differently now, even if I didn't want to. I can't just forget that she chose to cheat. So that's where we are now. I know that this is not what some of you wanted, but ultimately I have to go with what I believe will make me happiest in the long run. My head says be cautious, and I'm going to guard my heart for a long time, but my heart is still in love with her. We are going out on a date Friday night, which she is really looking forward to. I have no idea how long I will be staying with my brother. I may not make it past Friday, but if nothing else, I feel like I have some control here, which I felt I had almost none of before the talk. In the end, I held her for a long time, and we slept together. I do not want a broken woman right now. That is kind of what she is. I want her to be my partner for life, but I do want her to know that to be a partner, she has to care about my feelings as much as I do hers. P.S. I had to do some real hard thinking about my new brother-in-law. Again, I've only met him a few times, and he seems like a nice enough guy, but at the end of it all, he was certainly aware of the issue. Just to keep peace in the family, I'm going to not make a stink about him because that will certainly make every holiday tough going forward. As long as he never mentions the incident or the guy ever again around me, I can live with it. This post has been up for 40 minutes, and I've received 21 comments, but I've already gotten 28 PMs. I think it's just sad that people feel so intimidated by the group, think that they won't post their views publicly. I am happy to get the advice and words of support, but really nobody should be afraid to speak their mind. Sorry, I guess I kind of forgot to address this. It's not going to make anyone happy, but here goes. The truth is, she knew perfectly well that what she did was cheating. She has never denied that. However, what she did think was that being married was like crossing the finishing line, and that she basically got by with it. She hid it because she knew if I knew, it would be over. However, her shock was that if I knew after being married, I would still think of it as a big deal and ultimately could end the marriage. I'm not sure if I was clear enough, so let me rephrase. She damn well knew it was wrong and that it would have ended us if I ever found out about it. However, she thought that repercussion ended when we got married. She genuinely was shocked that I still considered it cheating because it did not happen within the confines of holy matrimony. Yes, believe it or not, even though she did this and has some other issues that would make you scratch your head, she is devoutly Christian. As you can tell, I am not. So while I think it's a load of crap, there is a very specific religious aspect to what she sees as marriage. Encouragement and wondering what has happened for those of you who have asked me to give you an update. Here is a brief one. IVJTM, we've been staying with my brother for a little over a month. I cannot say enough nice words about him. He has bent over backwards to help me, and IVDJTM VV come to appreciate him in a whole new way. Growing up, we were close, but never really close, if you know what I mean. This has shown me that our bond is much stronger than I ever imagined it was. The big news is that I have delivered her with divorce papers. Now, before those of you who wanted me to dump her jump for joy, let me explain something. I went to a divorce lawyer and explained everything, including the fact that I did not want to go through with the divorce, but wanted everything in place just in case. He drew up a divorce decree and made 3 copies. One he kept on file, one for her, and one for me. I decided to take the paperwork to her myself because I knew she would be upset, and I wanted to explain to her what was happening. I gave her the paperwork in a manila envelope and explained what it was before she opened it. I also made very clear to her that I was not going to do anything with it unless we both failed to meet the conditions we agreed upon. I explained that I was committed to us, but I really needed to see that we were headed in the right direction, and that this was only there as a standby in case she didn't think I was serious. Well, this did not go over as well as I had hoped, and in retrospect, this was a mistake on my part. She had been doing everything in her power prior to that to live up to the agreement. We had been out on several dates prior to this that were great for both of us. In other words, my timing sucked. My intention was good, but it did make it look like I was not acknowledging the steps she was taking to make this work. This led to another giant anxiety attack that we could not get under control with her meds. So off to the ER we went again. This time they gave her a shot and sent her home, and we both agreed that we would keep her family out of it this time. I stayed with her for 2 days just to make sure she was okay. This, of course, came up in our counseling session, and, well, let's just say that I came across looking like a manipulative idiot, which, again, in retrospect, I was. I ended up taking my copy and her copy and tearing them up in front of her. She doesn't know there is a 3rd copy, but I plan on having the lawyer discard that as well. So now I pretty much feel like a monster because the look on her face when she got the divorce papers was something I never want to see again. She was so happy to see me that day, and then I gave her that, causing an instant combination of sadness and terror. Other than that bump in the road, things have actually been going very well. Well enough, in fact, that IVDJTMR moving back home this weekend. My brother has been great, but IVJTMM cramping his style no matter what he says. It's been fun playing Xbox every night, though. I won DATMT, deny it. But mostly, IVJTMM going home because she has done everything I have asked of her, and I have put her through hell. I think she's paid a steep enough price, and I know she understands how serious this was. Also, in case I didn't mention this before, I do love her. She made a very stupid, selfish mistake, but it was years ago, and she had been almost the perfect wife up until the discovery. So, IVDDTMM, sorry to disappoint many of you, and IVJTM, sure I will once again get many PMs telling me that I am a cuckold and an embarrassment to all men. But I don't VJTM live your lives, and you don't VJTM live mine. So this should be it. There hopefully will be nothing to update going forward. We are not cured or healed by any stretch of the imagination, but we are on our way, and it's just going to take time, patience, and understanding.